The laugh hadn't even finished echoing before the air changed. Her joke, "He's just here for the free food," still lingered like cheap perfume. I heard forks pause mid-slice. A few chuckles, sure. One guy across the table even tried to high-five me. I let it land in the air. Just smiled like a man who'd heard that kind of joke before, because I had. Many times. Same mouth, same smile, same patronizing pat on the shoulder after. "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." Then the man in the black suit walked up. Older guy, hair slicked back, pressed linen. Paolo. I'd known him for over a decade. "Mr. Langston," he said with a small nod. His accent always made my name sound like something expensive. "Your usual table is prepared. Shall I move you there?" You could have heard a risotto drop. My wife's fork hovered midair. Her eyes darted around the table, looking for someone else, anyone, to explain what the hell just happened. "My usual table?" she asked, her voice too casual, brittle like a wine glass with a crack no one noticed until it shattered in someone's hand. Paolo glanced at her briefly, then back to me. "As you wish, sir. It's ready either way." I tilted my head slightly. "We'll stay for now, Paolo." "Thank you." He nodded and stepped away, leaving behind a stunned silence and the faintest smell of truffle oil. That's when the questions started, not from her, of course. She was too busy blinking like someone slapped across the face without touching skin. It was her new boss, the guy with the perfect teeth and a Rolex he checked too often. "Wait," he said slowly. Are you the Langston from the Donatelli renovation? I thought that was. Wait, are you that Langston?" I sipped my wine before I answered. "I'm an early investor," I said, like it was nothing. "Just helped out during a rough patch. Paolo and I go back." It wasn't a brag. It was a tap on the glass before the cracks began to spread. Her hand, I noticed, had stopped moving entirely. Her smile froze in place, but the eyes, they started screaming before her mouth did. See, she'd always thought of me as background music. Pleasant, predictable, forgettable. The guy who held the camera at company retreats. The man who dropped her off at charity galas and waited in the car. But tonight, the music played louder. You wouldn't believe how many of you watch these stories without hitting subscribe. Seriously, over 90%. And each subscription helps the team create more moments like this. So if you're here, enjoying the unraveling, hit that button. It means more than you think. Back at the table, her assistant, young, sharp, surgically groomed, leaned in and said, "I had no idea your husband was connected to the Donatellis." She didn't answer, just reached for her wine like she wanted to disappear into the glass. Someone else asked how long I'd known Paolo. "About 11 years, I said. "Long enough to know which dishes aren't on the menu." And right on cue, the waiter returned. Not with the entrees everyone else had ordered, but with a plate of seared venison and black garlic risotto. "Chef special," he said, setting it in front of me. "He said you'd prefer this." That's when her colleague across from me whispered, "You really do have a usual table, huh?" Another said, "I thought that dish was discontinued last year." I didn't need to answer. I just cut the venison, slowly, precisely. Her boss watched me. Her junior manager watched her. And my wife, my ambitious, carefully curated wife, tried to re-enter the conversation by asking someone about quarterly ad spend like nothing happened. Like she didn't just lose control of the entire narrative. It didn't work. They saw her differently now. They saw me. And they wondered what else they hadn't been told. The silence didn't break. It thickened. One of her team members tried to change the subject, mumbling something about ski plans or analytics dashboards, but nobody bit. The air had shifted. No one was looking at her anymore. Not like they used to. All those months she spent curating her image, the sleek blazers, the power walk, the endless subtle drops about managing everything herself, just started to look like theater. Her boss, the same one who'd given the toast minutes ago about true leadership, was now glancing between me and her like he'd just been handed a file marked confidential that nobody told him existed. He leaned in, less polished now. "So you're the early investor." "Huh." Donatelli Group made quite the comeback after the fires. "That was you." "Partially," I said. "I helped get the right architects in. Kept the lights on when the old partners wanted to liquidate." My wife finally spoke. "Wait, you never told me any of this." I shrugged. "You said you didn't want to talk about my side gigs. Said it bored you." She laughed too loudly, forced. "Well, now I'm curious. What else don't I know?" I looked at her deadpan. "How long is dinner?" A few people laughed. Not the ha-ha kind. The kind that slips out when no one knows what else to say. Her boss swirled his wine and gave her a curious glance. "You never mentioned your husband was involved in hospitality at this level." She smiled tightly. "He's not. I mean, he invests, but it's not his thing." He nodded slowly. Still, impressive. My brother tried to get in on the Donatelli reopening, but said the founding circle was sealed tight. She took a breath, ready to pivot, but another colleague spoke up. This one younger, sharp, a little too eager. Langston, are you on the board of the nonprofit that did the Little Italy restoration? I thought I saw your name in the report. I nodded once. Still am. My wife blinked again. I could see it behind her eyes, doing the math, trying to backtrack how many conversations she'd ignored, how many offhand comments she'd brushed off as just me dabbling. In her mind, I was the guy who fixed the garbage disposal, who made decent scrambled eggs, who bought gifts she subtly returned. She had never asked why I always tipped the valet in cash, or why certain names dropped into conversations with quiet weight. I was her domestic background, not a player in her professional spotlight. Until now. Anyway, she chirped, clapping her hands once too loudly. Has anyone seen the Q3 pitch deck that Mia put together? It's incredible. They humored her. A few nods. A chuckle. But no one was leaning in anymore. The hierarchy at that table had just rewritten itself, and she wasn't at the top. She tried again, this time complimenting someone's campaign. Another polite nod, but the momentum had left her. The conversation kept drifting back, toward me. How long had I known Paolo? How much had I put into the Donatelli rescue? Did I consult for other venues? Each answer landed like a pebble cracking through her polished glass. She smiled through it all, nodding, laughing, but I know that smile. It's the same one she used when her assistant spilled espresso on her blouse before a board call. White, hiding gritted teeth. It hit her when dessert came. They brought me the special again, without asking. A soft tiramisu with caramelized figs. Not on the menu. She stared at it, then at me. You come here that often? I wiped the spoon with a linen napkin. Only when I want to be remembered. She didn't touch her dessert. There, in a restaurant where she thought she'd be the queen of the evening, her throne vanished. She wasn't the lead anymore. Just a woman at a table with a man she never really bothered to know. And now the people she wanted to impress were starting to notice it, too. She was already half out of her heels when she started. Why didn't you tell me you owned part of that place? The sentence hit the wall before the front door even closed behind her. I walked into the kitchen without answering, loosened my collar, and poured a bourbon. Not one of the bottles she liked to display for guests. One from the cabinet she never opened. A small batch rye from a distillery in Kentucky she never visited, though I'd invited her once. You never asked, I said, staring into the glass like it had a better explanation than I did. She let out a scoff, sharp, theatrical. That's manipulative. You sat there like some mystery man while I looked like an idiot. I turned. No, I sat there like your husband. You just forgot who I was. She blinked, caught off guard by the calm in my voice. She was expecting a fight. She always did. That's the pattern. Poke until I react, then accuse me of overreacting. That's not fair, she said. Neither is rewriting a man in your head because he doesn't fit your LinkedIn aesthetic. She crossed her arms, jacket half off. So what? This was some kind of power play? Humiliate me in front of my boss? No, that was dinner. She paced like she always did when she couldn't control the script. You should have told me. I did. Years ago. You just didn't hear it. Too busy explaining how networking is everything, and how I should consider doing something more visible. So I stayed quiet. Visible just didn't suit your brand. She flinched at that, just a flicker. But I saw it. Truth is, I'd invested in Donatelli's the same year her startup fizzled out. She came home crying, blamed the team, blamed the market, blamed the city. I listened, held her, poured wine, told her it wasn't her fault. Then I went out the next morning and wrote a check to save a restaurant I loved, one that was 2 weeks from bankruptcy. I spent nights on the phone with the architect, weekends sketching floor plans on napkins with Paolo, negotiating vendor contracts, even pushing the city for parking variances. But that part of my life never made it into her highlight reel. She told people I dabbled in hospitality ventures, like I sold churros out of a food truck. Cute. Dismissible. Do you know how that looked? She said, finally slowing down. Like I didn't even know my own husband. Like I built this whole thing, and you were just lurking. I raised an eyebrow. Lurking. Fine, present. Silently undermining me. I chuckled, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You think I undermined you? You let them believe I was clueless. You were clueless. About me. And there it was. She hated that more than anything. Not the business angle, not the awkward glances, the fact that I had layers she never bothered to peel back. I supported your promotion, I said. I showed up when you asked, smiled when you needed props. But tonight, that wasn't about me. That was about you being forced to see the version of me that didn't orbit around you. She didn't respond right away. She walked to the kitchen island, picked up her phone, then set it back down. I just wish I wasn't blindsided, she muttered. I leaned back. So do I. But I've been getting blindsided for years. Just got used to smiling through it. She stared at me. Really stared, like she was trying to read an old book she never bothered opening. What else don't I know? She asked, not sarcastic this time. Not hostile, just hollow. I took another sip and said, enough to remind you I wasn't born to play your sidekick. She turned away, walked down the hall, and shut the bedroom door without another word. For years, I'd been the man behind her curtain, silent, stable, steady. Tonight, the curtain moved, and she didn't like the draft. She read the text 3 times before locking her phone and tossing it face down on the console table. One sentence. That's all it took to spike her blood pressure and ruin her almond latte. Didn't know your husband was that Langston. Wow. No emoji. No tone. Just the implied subtext she couldn't stand. You didn't know? The coworker who sent it was one of her interns last year. Bright, eager, and now evidently smarter than she gave her credit for. She didn't respond. What could she say? That she didn't know what I'd done with my life while she was curating hers? That she never asked? That she assumed Langston just sounded important on paper? Instead, she powered through the week like nothing had happened. Polished slides. Power blazers. Back-to-back meetings where she dropped phrases like scaling cross-functionality and thought leadership. But the crack had formed. She could feel it every time someone looked at her with a little more curiosity than usual. Every time someone paused before speaking to me at company functions. Every time someone whispered after she passed. Then came the meeting with her boss. He didn't even bother with pleasantries. Just motioned toward the seat and opened a manila folder. We're entering preliminary talks with the Donatelli Group, he said. It's early. NDA stage. But your husband might be part of the negotiation. She blinked. We don't discuss business. He's not. Her boss interrupted, gently but firmly. Well, maybe he should. She tried to laugh it off. He's more private than I am. I didn't even know he was involved until the dinner. He raised an eyebrow. That's surprising. She hated that tone. That quiet, reflective, that hinted at disappointment. Then he closed the folder and folded his hands. Listen, you're excellent at your job. No question. But perception's a strange thing in this industry. People like clarity, knowing who's who. And when your own team's wondering if your husband's the guy who bankrolls their favorite restaurants, and you seem unaware, it makes them wonder what else you're not aware of. She sat up straighter. Are you questioning my leadership? No. I'm questioning your communication. It's different. The rest of the meeting was perfunctory. Updates. Next steps. Polite nods. But she left with one thing she didn't enter with, doubt. That night, she came home angry. The kind of anger that doesn't shout. It simmers. Low boil. Controlled burns. She walked into the living room, heels still on, and stood there like she was waiting for a cue line. You could have given me a heads up. I looked up from my book. About what? Donatelli. The merger. The board. I bookmarked the page. Didn't think you were interested in that side of my life. She narrowed her eyes. Don't be smug. I'm not. I'm being consistent. She paced, arms crossed. Do you know how it looks? Like I don't even know who I'm married to. Do you? I asked. She stopped. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've spent the last 7 years telling everyone I'm a low-key type who's into restaurant stuff, while you chased every public-facing milestone you could find. Now that people realize I've been in rooms you never stepped into, suddenly you're embarrassed. She walked toward me, slowly, carefully choosing each word. I'm not embarrassed. I'm blindsided. Same thing, different lighting. Her jaw tightened. So this is revenge? For being proud of my promotion? No. This is me existing in the same world as you. Finally, she hated that. Not because it wasn't fair, but because it was. For years, she crafted a narrative. Rising female executive, supportive but forgettable husband, a life that looked perfect from a certain angle. And I'd let her. Sat at gala tables as the +1, offered to take pictures for her team dinners, waited in the car during award ceremonies I paid to sponsor anonymously. But now I was the point of conversation. Now the name she used to skip over in bios was being circled in boardrooms. Now the room tilted in my direction. And she realized, for the first time, she no longer controlled the story. It was one of those galas where the wine is poured too often and the praise even more. A fundraiser for coastal conservation or inner-city arts, I don't remember. It had her name on the event brochure, somewhere between committee co-chair and marketing visionary. She looked the part, of course. Sleek dress, camera-ready smile, champagne in hand. But her eyes were restless. She kept scanning the room like a woman afraid of missing her own reflection. I was standing near the silent auction table, inspecting a signed basketball I had no intention of bidding on, when I felt a tap on my arm. Still flying under the radar? A woman said with a smile that knew too much. I turned. Cassandra, from her old agency days. The one who once joked about my wife, collecting resumes like she's casting a series. I gave a half smile. Still trying. She sipped her drink and leaned in, like this was less gossip and more warning. She's been different, especially since Bryce joined the team. There it was again. That name. Bryce. I'd heard it too often lately. In passing. On speaker calls when she thought I wasn't listening. Bryce said we should lead with the lifestyle hook. Bryce nailed the pitch. Bryce thinks the Paris campaign is brand-defining. Always delivered with a casual laugh, the kind that's meant to sound harmless. Bryce, the one who gave the toast at her promotion dinner. The one who laughed too hard when she threw me under the bus. He's just here for the free food, she'd said. And Bryce had nearly choked on his Syrah. I played it cool. He seems popular. Cassandra's smile faltered for a half second. Just enough. He is, she said. With the team. Especially her. Look, maybe it's nothing. But I know her. The way she talks about him. It used to be how she talked about you. Back when your name still came with sparkles in her voice. She raised her glass. Anyway, maybe I'm wrong. But when the shine fades, people look for new mirrors. Then she walked off, leaving her perfume and that sentence hanging in the air like a warning flare. I didn't react. Didn't confront. I just watched my wife across the room, laughing too loudly with her hand on Bryce's shoulder, leaning in a little too close. The same proximity she once reserved for me at events like this. Before I became the accessory, something in me cooled. Not with rage. Not yet. Just stillness. A quiet shift. Like an elevator descending a little too fast. I started replaying things. The late-night texts she turned screen down when I walked in. The last-minute reschedules. The new perfume she claimed she wore for confidence. The way she stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning, subtle at first, then routine. And Bryce, always in the periphery, in the stories, in the background of company photos. The man who stood just far enough not to be suspicious, but always within reach. I didn't say anything that night. Not to her. Not yet. Instead, I started listening closer. Her office had moved to one of the properties I leased to a boutique agency. She said it was temporary. Cheaper. Convenient. What she didn't know was that the building had cameras in the hallways. Installed years ago for insurance purposes. Left untouched. Never disabled. That's when curiosity hardened into intent. I'd been playing the quiet husband for too long. The man who smiled through public jabs and private exclusions. But I wasn't just watching now. I was waiting. Waiting to see how far the cracks went. And who else had their hands on the hammer. I wasn't looking to catch her. Not at first. It started as a flicker. A moment of stillness during a drive home when her voice on the Bluetooth call softened just a little too much. Not the words. Those were corporate, hollow. But the tone. It was how she used to sound when she talked to me before I became furniture. Warm. Playful. Controlled. But with an undertone of flirtation that didn't belong in a quarterly revenue discussion. And then I remembered the building. A 3-story commercial space I bought back in 2016 when the market dipped. I'd leased out the second floor to her firm a few months ago, after she insisted the location was convenient for her new team. She called it temporary, said they were in transition before moving to a real space. She never asked who owned it. She forgot what else I owned, what else I maintained, what else I saw. The hallway cameras weren't there for spying. They were installed years ago during renovations, standard insurance requirements. One tucked discreetly above the stairwell, one facing the elevator, and a third down the main hallway that led to her office. I logged into the security panel late that night. Nothing dramatic. No suspicion in my fingers. Just stillness. And a question I wasn't ready to admit I already knew the answer to. The first clip was time-stamped 11:17 p.m. A Thursday. 2 shadows. One tall, broad-shouldered. The other, her. Slender, distinct gait. She walked in heels like most people walk barefoot. Confident. Calculated. Comfortable. The camera had no audio. Just movement. He reached out and touched her elbow near the stairwell. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. Next clip. Same night. 11:31 p.m. They exited together. Her hair was let down, something she never did at the office, unless she was leaving for something personal. His jacket was off, carried slung over one shoulder like a man used to staying late. The hallway was empty, but they moved like they'd forgotten to care. I scrubbed through the next few nights. Same pattern. Late entry. Lingering departure. Always just the two of them. always with a kind of closeness that didn't belong to colleagues. No kiss, no smoking gun. But that was the part that chilled me. It wasn't some sloppy affair. This wasn't lipstick on a collar or a drunk confession at a holiday party. This was measured, private, practiced, which meant it wasn't new. I downloaded the clips, organized them in a private folder, dated, titled. There were 8 videos total. 8 confirmations that the woman who once begged me to come to her office Christmas party now closed her door to sit across from another man late into the night. A man who laughed louder than me, who showed up in her stories more than I ever did, who knew the version of her I hadn't seen in months. She had no idea I knew, and I didn't plan to tell her. Not yet. I saved the files to a thumb drive, labeled it with a red dot. No title, just the mark. I placed it in the back corner of my desk drawer. She thought she knew everything I did, that I was just into restaurants and renovations. She'd tell people, he dabbles in real estate too, I think, like I collected stamps. But I don't dabble. I document. And now I waited, not to confront, not to plead, but to decide how the truth would be revealed and who would be watching when it was. She kissed my cheek before we walked in. Light, habitual, performed for the team trailing behind us, as if she could still play the role of adoring wife when it suited her optics. I let it happen, let her bask in the illusion that she was in control of this night, that I was the accessory again, that the spotlight was hers to wield. She thought this was her idea, a spontaneous dinner with her team at Donatelli's, where her husband, newly more involved, could finally show support. Networking, she called it, bridging professional circles. She didn't realize I'd set the guest list. Didn't question why I specifically asked for the mezzanine room. Didn't wonder why Paolo personally opened the door and kissed me on both cheeks like family. I watched her the moment she saw the setup. Fresh orchids, private waitstaff, menu cards printed with each guest's name, wines that weren't even listed, custom pairings, the works. Her boss was impressed. Her assistant whispered, "Your husband knows how to host." Even Bryce smiled, smug, relaxed, the kind of man who assumes everyone else is 3 moves behind. The meal was flawless. She was radiant, overconfident, complimenting dishes I had chosen, laughing just a little too hard at Bryce's jokes, occasionally placing a hand on his arm like no one would notice. But I did. Everyone did. I excused myself just before dessert, said I needed to check on something with Paolo. She barely looked up, too busy recapping her campaign numbers for the next quarter. In the staff hallway, I pulled out my phone. One message. Play the clip. It took less than a minute. The lights dimmed, just slightly. Enough to signal something was coming, but not enough to trigger concern. Then the back wall of the mezzanine flickered to life. A large projection. Black and white footage. A hallway. Recognizable. Our building. No audio. Timestamp in the corner. She froze mid-sentence. At first, they all thought it was a security demonstration. Some team exercise. But then came the shadowed figures. 2 people. Late at night. 1 man, tall, broad-shouldered. 1 woman. Familiar silhouette. Familiar stride. Then, Bryce's hand on her lower back. Light. Lingering. Intimate. She didn't move away. She leaned closer. Another clip rolled. Different day. Same hallway. This time, her hand brushed his tie. His lips near her temple. Her mouth met his cheek, not in greeting, but in something else. Something slower. Something intentional. The room went dead. Nobody moved. Forks frozen midair. Glasses untouched. The projector clicked off without ceremony. Silence. She sat still, pale, mouth slightly parted like a woman who'd just stepped off a cliff and realized there was no ground beneath her. Bryce's eyes darted to the exit. I returned to my seat without a word. No confrontation. No accusations. Just presence. She finally found her voice, barely. What the hell is this? I sipped my wine. A reminder that cameras aren't just for security. Sometimes they're for clarity. She looked around the table, but no one would meet her gaze. Her boss pushed his plate forward, his expression unreadable. Her assistant looked physically ill. Bryce cleared his throat, but said nothing. She whispered, "You planned this." I smiled, thin and cold. Of course I did. She wanted me visible. She got it. But this wasn't support. This was truth, served course by course, until all that remained was the wreckage of her curated image and the one thing she could never tolerate, being seen completely. For once, I didn't have to raise my voice. The room did it for me. By Monday morning, the fallout had a name. Not scandal. Not affair. Just one soft phrase that corporate types wield like a guillotine. Reputational risk. At 9:07 a.m., a major client, one that had been weeks from signing a lucrative co-branding deal, called her firm and withdrew. No warning. No second meeting. Just a sterile voicemail left with the client relations team. We're reconsidering the partnership due to recent events. Concerns about internal culture. It took 38 minutes for the news to climb up the ladder and land in her inbox. Her assistant forwarded it with a clipped subject line, "Urgent, client issue." She didn't open it right away. She was still recovering from the nausea that hadn't left her since dessert Saturday night. But by 11:15, she was in her boss's office. Door closed. No small talk. He didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, if there's one thing clients hate more than being surprised, it's being publicly surprised." She swallowed. It was a private dinner. It was a loud private dinner. With whispers. And fallout. That clip? It's already made its way into 2 partner group chats. Do you know how that happens? She didn't answer. She knew exactly how it happened. He didn't mention the affair. Didn't have to. That wasn't the offense. Embarrassment was. "You'll remain on the current accounts," he said, voice flat. "But let's pause any movement on that VP to director pitch for now. Let the dust settle." It wasn't a suggestion. That promotion to executive director of brand partnerships, the one they hinted at just weeks ago, the one she was so sure would be finalized after the quarter, vanished. Poof. She walked out of the office trying to keep her posture, but every heel click echoed louder than usual. Emails stopped landing with the same urgency. People copied her less. Her assistant, once clingy to the point of mimicry, started showing deference to the VP of strategy, a woman she used to call insufferably safe. The isolation didn't come in a wave. It came in whispers, glances, silence in rooms where she used to hold court. As for Bryce, transferred. The notice was short. Effective immediately. Sent from HR. He'll be transitioning to a regional division in Phoenix, the email said. We wish him well. No goodbye party. No flowers. No mention in the Monday stand-up. He was gone by lunch. She didn't call him. Didn't text. Didn't ask why. She knew. And so did he. At home, I said nothing. She didn't bring it up either. Just came in quietly, dropped her bag a little too hard on the bench, and stared at the coat rack like it had answers. I watched her from across the kitchen. She stood there for a while, unmoving. Finally, she whispered, "I built all of it." I took a sip of my coffee and dressed it in glass. She turned sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Glass castles look great until the light hits them from the wrong angle." "Are you enjoying this?" she asked, eyes wild. Watching everything fall apart. I looked at her calmly. "You thought I was a spectator. Turns out, I had a better seat than you did." She scoffed. "You're acting like I'm the villain here." "No," I said. "You just forgot the show was being filmed." She stared at me like she wanted to scream, cry, or run, maybe all 3. But she did none of it. Just sat down, finally, and rubbed her temples like the headache wasn't just physical. She was learning a hard truth, one I'd known for years. When your image is everything, the cracks don't start with breaking. They start when people stop looking at you the same way. It was late. One of those nights where the quiet in the house feels intentional. No music. No television. Just the sound of the dishwasher humming faintly in the kitchen and the soft creak of the old leather couch as she sat beside me. She didn't start with her usual deflections. No sarcastic remarks. No backhanded justifications. Just silence, for once, full and heavy. "I didn't mean to humiliate you," she said, barely above a whisper. I stared ahead at nothing in particular. "But you did." She swallowed. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something, softness, maybe. A thread to pull that would bring us back to before. Before the jokes at dinners. Before Bryce. Before the hallway footage and her image shattering in real time. "You know, I never stopped loving you," she said. I finally turned to her. Her makeup was off. Just her bare face. Tired, tense, honest in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Is that what this is?" I asked. "Love." She flinched. Not dramatically. Just a flicker in the corner of her eye. "I lost myself," she murmured. I started climbing and couldn't stop. "And she paused, like she didn't want to say it out loud. "I stepped on you to get higher." I nodded. "You did." She reached out, fingers trembling, and placed her hand over mine. "We can fix this," she said. "We can. Just tell me what to do." I stood. She didn't let go right away. Her hand lingered like she thought standing would mean I was walking out the door. "There's nothing to fix," I said, calm. Measured. Final. "You broke it the moment you decided I didn't matter." Her voice cracked. "You matter more than anyone." Too late. It wasn't that I stopped loving her. That would have been easier. What died wasn't love, it was belief. The quiet belief that she saw me, respected me, valued me beyond what I could give her social orbit. And when that belief broke, it didn't shatter, it dissolved. Slowly, invisibly, until there was nothing left to hold on to. She stood too, desperate now. Please. We can go to therapy. Take a trip. I'll leave the firm. I already filed, I said. Her breath caught. 2 weeks ago, I added. No fanfare. No press release. Just paperwork. Like everything else you ignored until it showed up in a room full of witnesses. Her knees buckled slightly. She sat back down, stunned. You didn't even tell me, she whispered. Why would I? You stopped asking what I was doing a long time ago. I left her there, in the dim living room, staring at the floor like it might give her a map back to whatever version of me she thought she could still reach. But there was no map. No reset. Just reality. I wasn't being cruel. I was being done. She built an empire on image, and assumed I'd always be content as the man standing just outside the frame. She never noticed when I stepped out of it entirely. It was a Wednesday, rain in the forecast, but dry enough for the valet to leave the umbrellas tucked behind the podium. I wasn't planning to stay long, just a quiet dinner with Paolo, a bottle of Brunello, and some discussion about the new investment project going in 2 blocks south. Nothing theatrical. No plans. Until she walked in. She hadn't changed much. Same crisp lines in her blazer. Same heels with the red soles she used to say felt like purpose. Her hair was pinned back, clean, professional. Calculated. Always calculated. She approached the host stand with practiced poise, phone in hand, like she was too busy to be affected by anything around her. But I saw it. That small hitch in her breath when Paolo's nephew, now working as the evening host, smiled and said, "Ah, Mr. Langston's table." She froze. Just for a second. Long enough for him to notice. "No, I'm not with him," she said, her voice tight. He nodded. Understood. He didn't offer her the mezzanine. That was my space. Everyone who mattered knew it. Instead, he led her to a small two-top near the kitchen door, close enough to hear plates clatter, far enough from the windows to feel tucked away. Invisible. From above, I watched. Not with satisfaction. Not with bitterness. Just with clarity. She sat upright, scrolling her phone like it would protect her from the silence. Ordered wine. Tried to look indifferent. But her eyes kept flicking upward. Searching. She didn't see me at first. The mezzanine is dim, tucked behind glass and shadow, angled for privacy. But I saw her the moment she walked in. Paolo had texted. When her entree arrived, barely touched, she finally looked up. Saw me. Just a flicker of eye contact. She froze, then straightened her napkin. Her shoulders rose slightly, like armor being fastened. I didn't wave. Didn't call her over. Didn't send a drink. I simply raised my glass. She didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just looked down, slowly, and stared at the empty chair across from her like it was mocking her. I thought, maybe she'd come to apologize. Maybe she'd hoped I'd walk over. Offer a seat. Say it wasn't too late. But this wasn't her stage anymore. She'd spent years crafting the narrative. Polished power couple, driven wife, agreeable husband with hobbies and no heat. She spoke about me like a footnote. A soft place to land. Harmless. And now, she dined beneath me. Literally. The irony wasn't lost on me. Paolo joined me with espresso and a quiet glance. Should I move her? I shook my head. No. She's fine where she is. He nodded and left me with the bill and the silence. When I stood to leave, she didn't look up again. She didn't need to. She understood. I never chased her spotlight. I built the stage she was standing on. And when it cracked beneath her, I simply watched. From above.